My brother pretended to get clean, robbed me of thousands, and left me living in fear. So I kicked him out, cut him off, and made him beg for help in the most brutal way possible. My childhood was perfect, except for the PTSD it caused. And it was all from my older brother, Justin. He was 10 years older than me, so at first he was my role model. I tried to dress like him, get a haircut just like his, and even copy his vocabulary. But when I turned 14, my eyes began to open. I could hear him leaving the house at 10 p.m. every night, returning at 8 a.m., and sleeping all day. I knew he didn't have a job, so this made me insatiably curious. So one night, I snuck into his room. Immediately, my nostrils were met with the pungent smell of the devil's lettuce. I looked around and saw a bong that was placed beside lines of blow, just sitting right there on his wooden desk. My stomach twisted. As I lay awake that night, pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together. Why my bike had mysteriously disappeared. Why he never wanted to spend time with me. His emotional outbursts. For the next few years, Justin only got worse. I spent countless years wishing my parents would do something. Kick him out, get a restraining order, hit him back, anything. But no. Instead, they just let him do whatever he wanted. When he again stole my stuff and sold it online, it went unspoken. When he shouted at the top of his lungs for 2 hours at 3 a.m. until my parents finally handed him some cash, it went unspoken. So when I finished high school, moving out was a no-brainer. I never even bothered coming home for the holidays, and talking to my parents was too frustrating, so I didn't do that either. Instead, I sent 40% of every paycheck to them as a thank you for how they raised me. And as soon as I finished college, I became a paralegal at an amazing firm with a starting salary of $50,000 a year. So after a few years, I got my own apartment and a pretty decent car. It was around this time that I decided it was time to fully reconnect with my parents. My mom was the first one I called. "Honey, how are you doing?" Her voice instantly flooded me with a softness I didn't know I was still capable of. And when I asked if I could visit over the weekend, I swear I could hear her practically jumping up and down with excitement. Fast forward to that Friday. I had arrived at their front door, my arms filled with gifts for everyone, including Justin. But as soon as the door opened, the gifts were almost destroyed. Because my parents lunged at me for a hug so hard, I struggled to hold on to everything. As I went inside, I immediately noticed a thick cloud of smoke that filled the entire living room. I looked over to my parents, expecting them to be just as disgusted as me, but they just continued their conversation, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. On the surface level, they seemed pretty happy too, but as I looked into their eyes, I saw a deep sadness. It had only been a few years since I saw them, but they looked like they had aged by almost 2 decades. That's when Justin popped out of his room to bestow us with his presence. "Yo," he said to me, nodding his head. As I looked at him, the first thing I noticed were his nostrils. They were almost closed up, and his nose bridge had practically flattened. I didn't feel bad for him though. We had the same upbringing, the same loving parents, the same classy neighborhood. He literally had no excuse as to why he was dragging my parents down. And since it was 9 p.m., Justin left to meet up with some buddies. "You have to take him in," my dad said. "Honey, I know we don't speak much, but we haven't had a day off from babysitting your brother in so long. I need you, please." Their voices were shaky, desperate. They promised it was just for a few days, so I agreed. As soon as I said yes, my mom literally blew a sigh of relief. My dad's face lit up. "Thank you, son. Thank you." When Justin came home, I let him know about the new arrangement and drove him back to my place. He just crashed on the couch, and I hoped for the best. Instead, I was met with the worst-case scenario. It was Sunday night, and he asked me to borrow some cash. "How much?" $700. I laughed. "Dad usually gives $900. He moped. I shoved my hand into my pocket and pulled out a $20 bill before heading to bed. "I'm not our parents, and if you try to pull the same shat you used to do, I will literally kick you to the curb." He didn't say anything else, just left. And that night, I slept like a baby, with no idea of what was to come. When I got home the next day, there were 4 men in my living room. Turns out that $700 was to pay off a debt that Justin owed, and because it was 2 months overdue, the debt had turned into $3,000. It was made very clear that my options were my well-being or handing over the money. So, under their supervision, I calmly took out $5,000 in cash and handed it over. But when they finally left, I felt a deep anger brewing in my stomach because I had told him the truth. I was not our parents, and there was no way I'd let him F me over and walk away scot-free. I spent my entire teenagehood wishing someone would beat him into shape, but I never knew that someone was going to be me. I stood there in my living room, fists clenched, staring at Justin. He was sprawled on my couch like he owned the place, completely oblivious to the rage building inside me. $2,000. $2,000. That was almost a month's rent down the drain because of his BS. "Get up," I said. Justin looked at me with half-closed eyes. "What?" I said, "Get the F up, now." He slowly pulled himself to a sitting position. "Dude, chill. I told you I'll pay you back." "With what money, Justin? What effing money?" I was shouting now. "You don't have a job. You don't have skills. All you have is a darag habit and people who want to break your kneecaps." He flinched at that. Good. I wanted him to feel something, anything, resembling accountability. "Pack your crap. You're leaving." Justin's eyes widened. "What? Where am I supposed to go?" "Not my problem." I walked to the front door and yanked it open. "You've got 5 minutes. You can't do this," he said, not moving from the couch. Mom and Dad aren't here." I slammed my hand against the wall. This is my apartment that I pay for with my job that I work at every day, while you're getting high and making deals with guys who show up at my door threatening me. Justin stood up, swaying slightly. Those guys will come back, you know. They know where you live now. And there it was, the manipulation, the implied threat, the same crap he'd been pulling on our parents for years. But unlike them, I wasn't buying it. 5 minutes. I watched as he stuffed his meager belongings into his backpack. He didn't have much, just some clothes and his drug paraphernalia. The whole time, he kept glancing at me like he was waiting for me to change my mind. I didn't. When he was done, I handed him $50. This is more than you deserve. Get a motel room for the night and figure your life out. You're really doing this? He looked genuinely shocked. Your own brother? You stopped being my brother the moment you let those thugs into my home. I practically pushed him out the door and locked it behind him. Through the peephole, I watched him stand there for a minute, staring at the door like he couldn't believe what had just happened. Then he turned and walked away. I leaned against the door and slid down to the floor, my whole body shaking. I'd done it. I'd finally stood up to Justin, but instead of feeling triumphant, I just felt sick. What if those guys really did come back? What if Justin froze to death on the street somewhere? What if my parents found out I'd kicked him out? My phone buzzed. A text from my mom. How are things going with Justin? Dad and I are enjoying our first peaceful evening in years. Love you so much for doing this. Great. Now I felt even worse. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound made me jump, convinced it was either Justin coming back or his debt collectors. Around 3 a.m., I got a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. By morning, I was a wreck. I called in sick to work, something I never do. I spent the day jumping at every noise, checking the locks, and peering through the blinds like a paranoid lunatic. By evening, I'd convinced myself that kicking Justin out had been a terrible mistake. Not because I wanted him back, but because now I had no idea where he was or what he was planning. The next day, I forced myself to go to work. I needed normalcy. My coworker Morgan noticed something was off right away. You look like crap, she said as I slumped at my desk. Thanks. Just what I needed to hear. Morgan rolled her chair over to my desk. Seriously, what's going on? You never miss work. I hesitated. I'd never told anyone at work about my family situation. It was embarrassing, but Morgan was the closest thing I had to a friend in this city, and I was desperate to talk to someone. So I told her everything. About Justin's addiction, my parents enabling, the loan sharks showing up at my apartment, and how I'd kicked him out. When I finished, Morgan was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You did the right thing." "It doesn't feel right," I admitted. "I keep thinking about where he is." "That's because you're a good person," she said. "But you can't help someone who doesn't want help." She was right, but it didn't make me feel any better. I thanked her for listening and tried to focus on work for the rest of the day. When I got home that evening, I immediately knew something was wrong. My door was unlocked. I never leave my door unlocked. I stood in the hallway, heart pounding, debating whether to go in or call the police. Before I could decide, the door swung open. Justin stood there, looking even worse than when I'd kicked him out 2 days ago. "How did you get in here?" I demanded. He held up a key. "Made a copy that first night when you were in the shower." I snatched it from his hand. "Get out." "I can't," he said, and for the first time, I heard genuine fear in his voice. "They're looking for me." "Who? The guys from before?" He nodded. "I owe them more money." "Of course you do," I muttered. "How much more?" "Another 3 grand. 3,000? I couldn't believe it. "What the hell, Justin? I just paid them 2,000. "The interest keeps building," he said miserably. "And I borrowed more after you kicked me out." I pushed past him into my apartment. Nothing seemed to be missing, but it reeked of cigarette smoke. "Have you been staying here while I was at work?" "Just today," he said. I didn't have anywhere else to go. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw him out again, but the look of genuine terror on his face stopped me. This wasn't his usual manipulation. He was legitimately scared. "You can stay tonight," I said finally. "One night, then we're figuring something out." Relief washed over his face. "Thanks, bro. I swear." "Don't." I cut him off. "Don't make promises you won't keep." That night, I locked my bedroom door and pushed my dresser in front of it. I didn't trust Justin not to steal my stuff while I slept. I also texted Morgan, "If I don't show up for work tomorrow and don't call, contact the police, just in case." The next morning, I found Justin passed out on the couch. He looked terrible, sweaty and pale, twitching in his sleep. Withdrawal, probably. I left him a note saying I'd be back after work, and that he better not touch any of my stuff. At work, I couldn't concentrate. Morgan kept shooting me concerned looks. During lunch, she cornered me in the break room. "You let him stay, didn't you?" I nodded, ashamed. She sighed. "Look, my cousin went through something similar with her husband. Addiction, debt, the whole 9 yards. You can't just keep giving him money and a place to stay. He needs actual help." "Like what?" "Rehab," she said simply. "And not just any rehab. A good one, with a solid success rate. Those cost a fortune," I pointed out. "Less than a lifetime of paying off his debts," she countered. She had a point, but getting Justin to agree to rehab seemed impossible. He'd never admitted he had a problem, let alone expressed any desire to fix it. When I got home, Justin was awake but looking miserable. He was shivering despite it being warm in the apartment. "We need to talk," I said, sitting across from him. "About what?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "About the fact that you're a Dr. G addict who's in debt to dangerous people and has nowhere to live." He flinched. "Don't sugarcoat it or anything. I'm done sugarcoating things for you, Justin. Mom and Dad did that for years, and look where it got you." He didn't respond. "I'll make you a deal," I continued. "I'll help you with these guys you owe money to, but only if you agree to go to rehab." Justin laughed bitterly. "Rehab doesn't work. Have you ever tried it? No, but then how do you know? I pushed. Look, I'm offering you a way out here. A real way out. Not just a temporary fix. He was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, what about the money I owe? Those guys aren't just going to wait around while I'm in rehab. I'll handle it, I said, though I had no idea how. But you have to commit to getting clean. For real this time. Justin looked at me with bloodshot eyes. Why would you do that for me? After everything? It was a good question. Why was I still trying to help him? Maybe because despite everything, he was still my brother. Or maybe because I knew that if I didn't help him now, I'd be getting calls from my parents about his funeral sooner rather than later. Because no one else will, I said finally. The next day was Saturday, so I had time to research rehab facilities. Morgan had sent me some links, and I spent the morning calling around to check prices and availability. The good ones were expensive, like really expensive. We're talking $30,000 for a 90-day program, but a few had scholarship options or sliding scale fees based on income. While I was on the phone with one place, I heard a crash from the living room. I rushed out to find Justin on the floor, sweating profusely and shaking. What happened? I knelt beside him. Need something, he stammered. Just a little hit to take the edge off. No, I said firmly. You're detoxing. It's going to suck, but you need to get through it. You don't understand, he groaned. It feels like I'm dying. You're not dying. I helped him back onto the couch. But we should probably get you to a doctor. Detoxing can be dangerous without medical supervision. He shook his head violently. No doctors. They'll report me. For what? He didn't answer, which told me everything I needed to know. Whatever he'd done to get into debt with those guys, it was probably illegal. I sighed. Fine. No doctors for now. But if you get worse, we're going to the ER whether you like it or not. The next 48 hours were hell. Justin alternated between sweating and shivering, throwing up, and begging me to let him go out just for an hour. I refused each time. I called in sick to work on Monday, knowing I couldn't leave him alone. Morgan covered for me, telling our boss I had a stomach bug. By Tuesday morning, Justin seemed slightly better. He was able to keep down some toast and water, and the shaking had subsided somewhat. I decided it was safe to go to work for a half day. Don't leave this apartment, I warned him. I mean it, Justin. If you're gone when I get back, that's it. I'm done. He nodded weakly from the couch. I wasn't convinced, but I had to trust him at some point. At work, Morgan pulled me aside. How's it going with your brother? Rough, I admitted. He's detoxing at my place. It's not pretty. Her eyes widened. At your place? Without medical supervision? Are you insane? He refused to see a doctor. Of course he did, she said, exasperated. Addicts always refuse help until they're forced to take it. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache coming on. What am I supposed to do? Drag him to the hospital kicking and screaming? If necessary, yes, she said. Detox can unalive people, especially if they're coming off alcohol or benos. I hadn't considered that. I don't think he does those. Mainly blow, from what I've seen. Are you sure that's all? Addicts aren't exactly forthcoming about their habits. She had a point. I didn't actually know the full extent of Justin's drug use. I just knew what I'd seen. I'm heading home at lunch to check on him, I said. If he seems worse, I'll take him in. Morgan nodded, still looking concerned. Be careful, and call me if you need anything. When I got home, the apartment was quiet. Too quiet. I called out Justin's name, but there was no answer. The couch where I'd left him was empty, the blanket thrown aside. Damn it, Justin. I checked the bathroom, the kitchen, even my bedroom. No sign of him. I was about to give up when I noticed my laptop was open on the coffee table. I never left it there. I sat down and saw that the screen was open to my bank account. My heart sank as I checked my balance. He'd transferred $3,000 to an account I didn't recognize. I felt like I was going to be sick. He'd played me. Again. All that suffering. All that detoxing. Was it even real? Or just an act to get me to trust him enough to leave him alone with my stuff? I called the bank immediately, but they couldn't reverse the transfer without a police report. And filing a police report meant potentially getting Justin arrested. Despite everything, I hesitated at that thought. While I was still on the phone with the bank, my front door opened. Justin walked in, looking significantly better than when I'd left him. He was carrying a plastic bag from the pharmacy. Where the hell have you been? I demanded, hanging up on the bank. He held up the bag, getting some stuff for the withdrawal, Imodium, Gatorade, that kind of thing. And the $3,000 you stole from my account? His face fell. I can explain that. Please do, I said, crossing my arms. I'm dying to hear how you explain stealing from me after I took you in and helped you detox. I paid them off, he said quietly. The guys I owed money to. I called them and arranged a meeting. I stared at him, not sure whether to believe him. You expect me to believe you used that money to pay your debt? Not to buy more drugs? Call them if you don't believe me. He tossed me his phone. The number's under Mike. I looked at the phone, then back at Justin. If you're lying to me, I'm not, he insisted. I swear, I wanted to get them off our backs before I go to rehab. So you're actually considering rehab now? He nodded, looking down at his hands. After these past few days, yeah, I don't want to live like this anymore. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. But Justin had lied to me so many times before. Prove it, I said. Call one of these rehab places right now and set up an intake appointment. To my surprise, he agreed. I watched as he called the facility I'd been researching, the one with the sliding scale fees. He answered their questions honestly. How long he'd been using, what drugs, his recent attempt at detoxing. They had an opening for an assessment the next day. After he hung up, we sat in silence for a moment. I'm sorry, he said finally, for everything, for the money, for bringing those guys to your place, for being such a crappy brother all these years. It was the first genuine apology I'd ever heard from him. I didn't know what to say. I know you probably don't believe me, he continued. I wouldn't believe me either, but I want to try. For real this time. I nodded slowly. Okay, we'll go to that assessment tomorrow. But Justin, this is your last chance with me. I mean it. One more lie, one more theft, and I'm done. I'll call mom and dad and tell them you can't come back to their place either. I understand, he said. That night, I still locked my bedroom door, but I didn't bother with the dresser. It was a small step, but it was something. The next morning, we drove to the rehab facility. It was nicer than I expected. Clean and modern. Not the sterile hospital environment I'd imagined. The intake counselor, a woman named Reese, met with us together first, then asked to speak with Justin alone. While I waited in the lobby, I called my parents to update them. I hadn't told them about kicking Justin out or the DRIG dealers showing up at my place. As far as they knew, he'd been staying with me without incident. He's agreed to go to rehab, I told my mom. There was silence on the other end. Then, really? Our Justin? Yes, really. We're at the facility now for his assessment. Oh my goodness, she breathed. Your father will be so relieved. We've been trying to get him to consider rehab for years. I know, Mom. How did you convince him? I hesitated. Let's just say we had a come to our senses moment. After about an hour, Justin and Reese emerged from the office. Justin looked drained but somehow lighter, like a weight had been lifted. We have a bed available starting tomorrow, Reese told me. The program is 30 days inpatient, followed by intensive outpatient therapy and support groups. This is just the beginning of his recovery journey. And the cost? I asked. Based on Justin's situation and our sliding scale, we can offer a rate of $15,000 for the inpatient portion. That includes medical supervision for detox, therapy, and aftercare planning. It was still a lot of money, but less than I'd feared. I can manage that, I said. Justin looked at me in surprise. You're going to pay for it? Consider it an investment in never having to bail you out again, I said. On the drive home, Justin was quiet. Finally, he said, you don't have to do this, you know. Pay for rehab, I mean. I know I don't have to. I want to. Why? After everything I've put you through? I thought about it for a moment. Because I think you're actually serious this time. And because despite everything, you're still my brother. He nodded, looking out the window. I don't deserve a second chance. Probably not, I agreed. But you're getting one anyway. Don't waste it. That evening, we ordered pizza and watched a movie, something we hadn't done together since we were kids. It was strange how normal it felt, sitting there with the brother who had terrorized my adolescence, who had stolen from me just days ago. But for the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, there was hope for Justin. The next morning, I drove him to the rehab facility. He had a small duffel bag with the few clothes and toiletries he owned. As we pulled up to the entrance, he turned to me. What if I can't do this? He asked, his voice small. You can, I said, and you will, because the alternative is going back to the life you've been living, and I think we both know that's not sustainable. He nodded, taking a deep breath. Will you tell Mom and Dad I'm sorry? For everything? Tell them yourself when you get out, I said. They'll be proud of you for doing this. I watched as he walked through the doors of the facility, wondering if this was really the turning point, or just another false start in a lifetime of disappointments. On the drive home, my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Hello? Is this Justin's brother? A gruff voice I recognized from my living room a week ago. My heart raced. Yes. Just calling to confirm we received the payment. We're square now. Your brother's debt is cleared. Relief washed over me. Good. That's good. There was a pause. He's lucky to have you, the man said, his tone businesslike but not threatening. Then he hung up. I pulled over, suddenly overwhelmed. Justin had been telling the truth. He really had used the money to pay off his debt. Maybe, just maybe, he was serious about changing. When I got home, the apartment felt eerily quiet without Justin there. I spent the day cleaning, washing the sheets on the couch, airing out the living room, scrubbing the bathroom. By evening, there was no trace of my brother's stay except for a note I found tucked under the couch cushion. I know you probably won't believe this, but I'm going to make it up to you someday. All of it. Thanks for not giving up on me when everyone else did. Love, Jay. I sat on the couch, reading the note over and over. For the first time since Justin had come back into my life, I felt something other than anger or frustration. I felt hope. The next few weeks fell into a new routine. I'd go to work, come home, and then call the rehab facility to check on Justin's progress. They couldn't give me many details due to privacy laws, but they confirmed he was still there and participating in the program. On Saturdays, I was allowed to visit. The first visit was awkward. Justin looked different, cleaner, more alert, but also vulnerable in a way I'd never seen him. We sat in the visitor's lounge, making small talk about the food, the other patients, anything but the real issues between us. By the third visit, things had changed. Justin had started opening up in his therapy sessions, he told me, about our childhood, about how he'd started using Dr. Riggs to cope with feelings of inadequacy, about how he'd resented me for being the good son. I was jealous of you, he admitted. You always seemed to have it together. Even as a kid, I felt like I could never measure up. That's ridiculous, I said. I looked up to you. He laughed bitterly. Yeah, until you realized what a mess I was. You weren't always a mess, I reminded him. Remember when you taught me to ride a bike? Or when you helped me build that science project in 4th grade? He smiled faintly. I'd forgotten about that. Well, I didn't, I said. That's the brother I've been missing all these years. On my 5th visit, Justin had news. They're letting me call Mom and Dad tomorrow, he said. I'm nervous as hell. They'll be happy to hear from you, I assured him. They ask about you every time I talk to them. What have you told them? The truth. That you're in rehab and working hard. He nodded, fidgeting with the sleeve of his sweatshirt. I've been working on my amends list. You know, for the 12 steps. You're at the top. Me? Of course you, he said. I've treated you like crap for years, stolen from you, lied to you, brought dangerous people into your home. I have a lot to make up for. I didn't know what to say. This was a side of Justin I'd never seen. Reflective, remorseful, honest. You don't have to say anything now, he continued. I just wanted you to know I'm thinking about it, about how to make things right. As I drove home that day, I realized something had shifted between us. The anger I'd carried for so long was starting to fade, replaced by something I couldn't quite name. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of understanding. The next week, my parents called, ecstatic after speaking with Justin. He sounds so different, my mom gushed. Clear-headed, present. He apologized, my dad added, his voice thick with emotion. Said he was sorry for what he put us through all these years. Do you believe him? I asked. There was a pause. I want to, my mom said finally. But we've been here before, gotten our hopes up. I know, I said, but this time feels different. And it did. Each time I visited Justin, I saw more glimpses of the brother I'd idolized as a child. His quick wit, his creativity, his genuine interest in others. The drugs had buried those qualities for years, but they were re-emerging now. 3 weeks into his stay, Justin had another request. My counselor thinks it would be good for us to have a family session. You, me, mom, and dad. To talk about everything openly. The thought made my stomach clench. I don't know, Justin. That sounds intense. It will be, he acknowledged. But I need to face what I've done to all of you. And you guys need a chance to tell me how it affected you. I thought about all the things I'd wanted to say to Justin over the years. All the hurt and anger I'd bottled up. Maybe this was my chance to finally let it out in a controlled environment. Okay, I agreed. I'll talk to mom and dad about it. Our parents were hesitant, but ultimately agreed to the session. We scheduled it for the following Saturday, giving everyone time to prepare emotionally. The night before the session, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what I wanted to say to Justin, to my parents. How do you sum up years of pain and resentment in a single conversation? How do you express the complicated mix of love and anger you feel toward your family? By morning, I still didn't have the answers. But as I drove to pick up our parents for the session, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened today would change our family forever. I picked up my parents from their house, and the drive to the rehab facility was painfully quiet. Mom kept fidgeting with her purse strap, while Dad stared out the window. They looked nervous as hell, and honestly, I was too. This family therapy session could either help us heal or blow up in our faces. So how's he really doing? Dad finally asked, breaking the silence. Better than I've seen him in years, I said. He's actually present, you know, like the Justin from before all this started. Mom nodded, her eyes getting watery. I've been praying for this for so long. When we arrived at the facility, a staff member led us to a conference room where Justin was already waiting with his counselor, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Mitchell. Justin looked anxious, but gave us a small smile when we walked in. Thanks for coming, he said, his voice steadier than I expected. We all sat down in a circle of chairs. Nobody seemed to know what to do with their hands. Dr. Mitchell explained how the session would work. Justin would speak first about his addiction and the harm he'd caused. Then each of us would have a chance to share how his actions had affected us. When Justin started talking, I barely recognized him. Not physically, he still looked like my brother, but the way he spoke was completely different. No excuses, no manipulation, just raw honesty. I've been an addict for 12 years, he began. It started with the devil's lettuce in high school, then pills, then blow. I've stolen from all of you, I've lied to you, I've manipulated you, and I've put you in danger. He looked directly at me when he said that last part. He went on to detail specific incidents, stealing my bike when I was 14, taking mom's jewelry, maxing out dad's credit cards. With each confession, my parents seemed to shrink in their chairs. They knew about most of these things, but hearing them laid out so plainly was clearly painful. Then it was our turn. Mom went first, her voice shaking as she described the fear she lived with daily. Fear that she'd get a call saying Justin was unalived or in jail. Dad talked about the financial strain, how they'd depleted their retirement savings trying to keep Justin afloat. When my turn came, I found myself struggling to speak. All the things I'd rehearsed in my head suddenly seemed inadequate. You were my hero, I finally said. When I was a kid, I wanted to be exactly like you, and then I watched you destroy yourself and terrorize our family, and I couldn't understand why. I spent my teenage years either hiding from you or cleaning up your messes. I left home as soon as I could because I couldn't stand watching mom and dad enable you anymore. Justin nodded, taking it all in. He didn't try to defend himself or interrupt. And then when you showed up at my apartment with those guys, I continued, my voice getting louder. You put me in danger, Justin. Those weren't just some buddies you owed money to. Those were dangerous people who threatened me in my own home. I know, he said quietly, and I'll never forgive myself for that. The thing is, I said, surprising myself with what came next. Despite all that, I still care what happens to you. I still want you to get better, and that pisses me off sometimes because it would be easier to just write you off completely. Dr. Mitchell nodded encouragingly. That's very honest. It's common to have conflicting feelings towards someone who's hurt you. The session continued for almost 2 hours. There were tears, raised voices, moments of painful silence. But by the end, something had shifted. The air felt clearer somehow, like we'd lanced a wound that had been festering for years. As we were leaving, Justin pulled me aside. I meant what I said in there. I'm going to make this right. Just focus on staying clean, I told him. That's all any of us want. The drive back to my parents' house was different from the ride there. We talked about Justin's progress, about what would happen when he finished the program in a week. He can't come back home, I said firmly. Not right away. It's too easy for him to fall back into old patterns there. My parents exchanged glances. Where will he go? Mom asked. There's a sober living house near my apartment, I explained. It's structured, has curfews, regular drug testing. It would be a good transition. That sounds expensive, Dad said, worry creasing his forehead. I've already worked it out with the rehab center. Between my contribution and their scholarship fund, he's covered for 3 months. My mom reached over from the back seat and squeezed my shoulder. You're a good brother. I wasn't so sure about that. Part of me was still angry, still hurt, but I was trying, and that had to count for something. The next week flew by. I visited Justin one more time before his release, helping him plan for the transition to sober living. He seemed nervous, but determined. What about work? He asked. I need to start paying you back. One step at a time, I said. The sober house has job placement services. Use them. On the day of his release, I picked him up alone. My parents wanted to be there, but I convinced them it would be better to wait until Justin was settled in the sober house before visiting. The car ride to the sober living facility was awkward. Justin kept looking out the window, then back at me, like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Just spit it out, I finally said. I found out who's been paying for my rehab, he said. The counselor let it slip. I kept my eyes on the road. So I know it was you. All of it. Not Mom and Dad. I shrugged. They've spent enough on you over the years. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have made a difference? He thought about that for a moment. Yeah, actually, it would have. Knowing my little brother was willing to spend that kind of money on me after everything I've done. It means something. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just kept driving. The sober house was a large, well-maintained Victorian with a wide porch. The house manager, Richard, met us at the door and gave us a tour. The place was clean and orderly, with shared bedrooms and common areas. There were chore charts on the wall and a schedule of house meetings and group therapy sessions. Curfew is 10 p.m., Richard explained. Random drug tests twice a week. No overnight guests. You'll be expected to find employment within 2 weeks. Justin nodded, taking it all in. I understand. After getting Justin settled in his room, which he shared with another guy in recovery, I headed for the door. Justin followed me out to the porch. Thanks, he said simply, for everything. Don't thank me yet, I replied. Thank me when you've got 6 months clean. He smiled slightly. Fair enough. As I drove home, I felt strangely empty. For the past month, my life had revolved around Justin's recovery. Now I had to figure out what normal looked like again. The next few weeks established a new routine. Justin called me every few days to check in. He'd found a job at a warehouse. Nothing glamorous, but it paid enough for him to start contributing to his sober living costs. I visited him once a week, usually bringing takeout that we'd eat on the porch of the sober house. My parents visited him too, though less frequently since they lived further away. They seemed cautiously optimistic about his progress, but were careful not to get their hopes up too much. We'd all been burned before. About 2 months after Justin entered the sober house, I got a call from him on a Tuesday night. My heart immediately raced. Calls on weeknights weren't part of our routine. Everything okay? I asked, trying to keep the worry out of my voice. Yeah, everything's fine, he assured me. Better than fine, actually. I got a promotion at work. Shift supervisor. That's great, Justin. Seriously. And I've been saving up, he continued. I want to start paying you back for rehab. We can talk about that later, I said. Just focus on staying clean. I am. 90 days tomorrow. I felt a surge of pride. That's huge. Congratulations. There's a ceremony at my NA meeting. They give out chips for milestones. I was wondering if maybe you'd want to come. The invitation caught me off guard. Yeah, of course. Just tell me when and where. The NA meeting was held in a church basement the following evening. I felt awkward walking in, like I was intruding on something private. But Justin was waiting by the door, his face lighting up when he saw me. The meeting itself was eye-opening. People from all walks of life sharing their struggles and victories, supporting each other in a way that felt genuine. When it came time for the milestone celebrations, Justin went up to receive his 90-day chip. The pride on his face as he held up that small token was something I'll never forget. Afterward, we went for coffee at a diner across the street. Justin couldn't stop turning the chip over in his fingers. 3 months doesn't sound like much, he said, but it's the longest I've been clean since I was 17. It's a big deal, I agreed. You should be proud. He looked up from the chip. I've been thinking about Mom and Dad a lot in therapy, about how much I put them through. Yeah, it was rough on them. On you too, he added. I know that now. I was so wrapped up in my own crap that I never considered how it affected you growing up with an addict for a brother. I stirred my coffee, unsure how to respond. We'd never had conversations like this before. Anyway, he continued, I want to make amends, real amends, not just saying sorry. That's part of the program. What does that look like? I asked. For starters, paying you back for rehab and finding a way to make up for all the stuff I stole from you over the years. Justin, some of that stuff can't be replaced. My bike from when I was 14, that vintage gaming system Grandpa gave me, they're gone. He nodded. I know, but I'm going to try anyway. True to his word, Justin started sending me money every month. Not large amounts, but consistent payments that showed he was serious. He also started rebuilding his relationship with our parents, calling them regularly and visiting when he could get a ride out to their place. 6 months into his sobriety, Justin moved out of the sober house and into a small apartment with another guy from his NA group. He invited me over for dinner to celebrate, cooking a surprisingly decent pasta dish. Not bad for someone who lived on Hot Pockets and cereal for most of his adult life, I joked. YouTube cooking tutorials, he explained with a grin. I have a lot of free time now that I'm not, scoring doctrugs and running from dealers. After dinner, he handed me a small box. Inside was a vintage watch that looked vaguely familiar. "Is this Grandpa's watch?" he confirmed. "The one I took from your room when you were 16. I tracked it down on eBay. Cost me a fortune, but worth it." I turned the watch over in my hands, remembering how devastated I'd been when it disappeared. "I can't believe you found it." "I'm trying to make things right," he said simply. "One day at a time, right?" That night, driving home from Justin's new place, I realized something had fundamentally changed between us. The anger that had been my constant companion for years had faded, replaced by something that felt a lot like hope. A year after Justin entered rehab, my parents suggested we all get together for dinner to celebrate his sobriety anniversary. I offered to host at my apartment, which had become our usual meeting spot for family gatherings. As I set the table that evening, I thought about how much had changed in a year. Justin was now a shift manager at the warehouse, taking night classes to get his associate's degree. My parents looked years younger. The constant stress of dealing with Justin's addiction lifted from their shoulders. And me? I was learning what it meant to have a brother again. Not the idolized hero of my childhood or the terror of my teenage years, but something new. Something real. The doorbell rang, and I opened it to find Justin holding a cake with 365 days clean written on it in blue frosting. "Cheesy, I know," he said with a self-conscious smile, "but my sponsor says it's important to celebrate milestones." I took the cake from him and set it on the counter. "It's not cheesy. It's a big deal." Our parents arrived a few minutes later, bringing Justin's favorite lasagna and enough garlic bread to feed an army. We ate and talked and laughed in a way that would have seemed impossible a year ago. After dinner, Justin cleared his throat. "I have something I want to say to all of you." We fell silent, waiting. "A year ago, I was at rock bottom. I'd stolen from all of you, lied to you, put you in danger." He looked at me when he said that last part. "I didn't think I deserved another chance, but you gave me one anyway, especially you," he said, nodding toward me. "You could have walked away. No one would have blamed you, but you didn't." I felt my throat tighten. "You're my brother." "Yeah," he said, and I'm finally trying to act like it. Later that night, after our parents had gone home and Justin was helping me clean up, he asked, "Do you think you'll ever fully trust me again?" I considered the question carefully. "I trust that you're working hard on your sobriety. I trust that you want to make things right. The rest, I think it just takes time." He nodded, accepting this. "Fair enough. I've got time now." As I watched him loading the dishwasher, such a normal, mundane task, I realized that's what we were building. A normal relationship. Not perfect, still complicated by our history, but real and honest in a way it had never been before. "Hey," I said, "remember when you asked if I thought I'd ever fully trust you again?" He looked up from the dishes. "Yeah, I think I'm getting there." The smile that spread across his face told me that was enough for now. We had a long road ahead, but for the first time in years, I was actually looking forward to seeing where it led.